Have you ever felt like a doctor is blaming you for your illness? Has a doctor ever blamed your symptoms on stress, weight, or tiredness? But stress can't cause an ear infection. Hi all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, hello, welcome, come in. I'm Eliza. I make content every Thursday at 5 p.m. all about disability awareness, LGBTQ+ positivity and lifestyle things. So come in, and today we're going to be reviewing a quiz that I did on my Instagram where we talk about disability and medical situations and the situations that disabled people have been put in. So if you're interested in that, then stick around because there's definitely some very juicy content in there. So let's go. So a couple of weeks ago on my Instagram, I basically did like a disability poll where I got all of my followers who are disabled to respond about things and situations that they've been put in being a disabled person. And I thought that the outcome was very interesting because quite a lot of the time I feel quite alone in my experiences within disability, and quite often get told that, like, when I feel uncomfortable around doctors and things like that, that I'm just making it up because nobody else feels like that, blah blah blah. So I wanted to ask my followers the questions and maybe talk about some of the situations that I've been put in, and it was really interesting the results that we got. So let's dive into the questions and the results, and yeah, some of them are definitely interesting and not what I expected. So the first question I asked was, has a doctor ever blamed your symptoms on stress, weight, or tiredness? And 82% of people said yes, and 18% said no. So much more people said yes than no. And there was 1,148 votes for yes and 260 votes for no. Now, obviously, I'm privileged in the sense that I cannot talk on weight. I am naturally a slim person. I'm also white, so I know that skin colour and weight are two different categories that doctors can definitely discriminate on, and I am not denying that that can happen. It's not something that I have personally had experience with, but if you feel comfortable and you have had experience in that, please let me know down below. If you want to, of course, please don't give any information or say anything that you don't feel comfortable talking about. However, I can talk about the stress side of things, and I've definitely had a lot of doctors blame my symptoms on stress. It's happened so much. One time, I'm not joking, I came out in full hives all over my entire body from eating something that I was allergic to, but we weren't sure what it was, and it was just put down to stress. I ended up having to have like loads of antihistamine and like injection, I think even 2 injections in the end to get rid of the hives. They were like all over my face, my whole face was swollen, it was terrible, it was awful. But initially it was all blamed on stress. I've had ear infections blamed on stress, I've had my bladder blamed on stress, I had joint pain blamed on stress, and it was only when I went private that I finally got my diagnosis for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. If you are new here, I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It affects all areas of my body. I'm also being tested for POTS and mast cell activation syndrome, and I've had all of those blamed on stress before, and it's really frustrating and annoying, and yeah, I don't know why doctors will just blame everything on something else when they don't know what it is. And I get that stress can cause issues, but stress can't cause an ear infection. Not that I've heard of anyway. So why do they constantly blame it on that? And the fact that, what was it, 1,148 people said that their doctor had done this, that is a lot of people. That actually scares me a bit, to how many people have said this. So my next question was, do you trust doctors? And there were 4 answers to this. Yes, always, sometimes, / if I know them, not really, and never. So let's have a look at the results. So yes, always, 88 people said yes, always. 826 said sometimes / if I know them. 553 said not really, and 118 people said never. And I find that really interesting because I personally don't tend to trust doctors. Sometimes I don't necessarily go into an appointment thinking I'm not going to trust this doctor, but because I've had so many negative experiences from doctors, it can be a bit difficult to trust them. So I do kind of go in with like sometimes / if I know them, if it's a doctor that I've seen before and I kind of trust them, blah blah blah. But I find it really interesting that only 88 people said that they always trust their GP, and that makes me really question why that is. And I definitely think that that's something that GPs and medical practitioners need to work on. Obviously, it is really important to note here that the NHS is critically underfunded, so it can be really difficult for doctors to do a good job in a way because there's no money, and that is really, really difficult. However, when you're on the other side of that and you're really fighting for medical help, and often things are kind of getting ignored when you're saying like, hey, this is hurting, etc., that can be really difficult as well. So I think it can definitely be seen on both sides, but I do find it really interesting that most people don't automatically trust their doctor. And I think it's an interesting question to ask why that is. And yeah, as I say, for me, it's because I haven't been listened to. I've been put in some negative situations before with doctors, which I'm not going to talk about because they are quite upsetting for me, but I have in the past. So those things do make it really difficult for me to trust doctors. And I've had my pain and symptoms brushed off so many times that, to me, I often don't trust doctors myself. And let me know down below if you do or don't trust doctors. So my next question was, are you diagnosed? And 64% of people said yes, and 36% said no. So 944 people said yes, and 528 said no. That's really interesting as well, because I preach very heavily that diagnosis is really difficult to get access to. And a lot of people ask me, like, what's your idea on self-diagnosis? And my opinion is that self-diagnosis is definitely valid. I think that it's important to try and get diagnosed if you can and if you're safe to do so, because you don't want to say that you've got something that, i.e. let's say cancer, without seeing a GP, because if you self-diagnose yourself with that and don't ever get any support and you did have it, that would be really bad. And also you don't want to kind of have that stress of, I think I've got this, but I haven't ever had a doctor say yes or no, because doctors will push you through for testing for like emergency things, if that makes sense. But when it comes to mental health things or other conditions, etc., like autism, ADHD, I am very strong and support self-diagnosis because I know how difficult it is to get a diagnosis. Same with Eliza syndrome, that's really difficult to get a diagnosis. So I definitely know that diagnosis is a privilege, but I guess my thoughts on self-diagnosis are it can be a really, really good tool when it's used correctly, which I think most people do use it correctly, in my opinion anyway. And it just goes to show that there are 528 people just from my Instagram stories who are likely trying to get a diagnosis or have tried in the past. And I get messages all the time from people being like, how did you get diagnosed with Eliza syndrome? I think I've got it. I've been fighting for ages and ages to try and get a diagnosis on the NHS, and I've just never got anywhere. And it's really interesting that there's 528 people at this time that were struggling with that. And that's, I guess, disappointing. What does make me a bit happy is the fact that 944 people have been diagnosed, and that is good to know that there are people that are getting diagnosed and you are able to access those things. And if you are fighting for a diagnosis, honestly, self-diagnosis is valid for many conditions, and you will get there eventually, but also remember to not use up too much energy if it's a diagnosis that you don't think that you're going to be able to be offered any more help for. So yeah, because I quite often get asked like, well, why did you go for a dyspraxia diagnosis, blah, 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 and I went through uni. Would I suggest that somebody get a dyspraxia diagnosis? Obviously, if you really feel like you need one and you really feel like you need the support, 100% go and get one. However, I've never got any support for my dyspraxia. I don't know if that's just me. So is it something that I would now kind of use up my energy to access? Probably not, but it was given to me and offered to me, so I went for it. So you kind of have to like weigh up the pros and cons, I think, in that situation as well. So next question was, if you are diagnosed, was your diagnosis simple or taken seriously? And 68% of people said no. So 637 people said no and 298 said yes. So 637 people felt that their diagnosis was not taken seriously, or they kind of had to fight for that diagnosis, and that definitely rings true to my story. I had to go private to get my diagnosis because I just was not being listened to, and it's interesting that many other disabled people and people with conditions are experiencing the same thing. So yeah, that's quite scary in a way. And the next question kind of leads on from this as well. Do you feel supported by your medical/mental health/ support team for your diagnosis? 66% of people said yes, 34% said no, 807 people said that they do not feel fully supported for their condition. That is a lot of people, and 414 said that they do. I personally don't feel supported at all. I have to fight for every single medical situation that I'm put in because I just don't get listened to at all. And I often find that medical situations and appointments are just tiring for me because of that reason. And the only time I've ever kind of been able to access things is privately, unfortunately. So my next question was, how long did your diagnosis take to get? So the options were straight away, less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 9 years, and 10 plus years. So I have to share these results like separately. So for the different categories, straight away, 82% of people, 82 people. Less than a year, 159 people. 1 to 2 years, 247. 3 to 5 years, 253. 6 to 9 years, 113. And 10 plus years, 178. So I find it really interesting that most people were diagnosed at least after a year. After they, I guess, were experiencing symptoms. I'm 23 years because I was having symptoms since I was born, and it took me until I was 23 to be diagnosed. So only 82 people were diagnosed straight away, and that is really scary. And I guess often in that situation it would be something that is like visible or can be like tested and confirmed, whereas not all conditions can be. Like with my condition, it's basically done almost like on a checklist, and it's really interesting that most people are experiencing symptoms for many years before they get access treatment. And again, this comes back to the NHS being critically underfunded. This is not the direct fault of medical people working in the NHS. It is literally just because there's so many people and so little funding that wait lists are so long. So the next question is, do you have anyone to help you, or do you like advocate for yourself? So 510 people said no, and 540 people said yes. So this is pretty split in half, that they feel that there are people to help them, and the other half feel that they have to advocate for themselves. It is disappointing that half of people feel that they have to advocate for themselves and that they're basically not being listened to. Again, this is to do with being underfunded, and also something that I do think that medical professionals do need to work on, ensuring that we do listen to all patients and at least making people feel that they are being listened to. I'm not a medical professional, so I guess I can't speak on behalf of medical professionals. It's just me, from my personal opinion. I think it would be good if I went into a doctor's and felt listened to, and like I didn't have to kind of fight for the access and help that I need. So yeah, I do think that is something that medical professionals should work on, in my opinion, but I'm not one, so I guess I can't 100% say. So the next question is, do you feel that other people understand you? So this means like, do other people understand your disability or what you're going through, things like that. 937 people said no, and 200 people said yes. This is really interesting. I think a lot of to do with this is the media, because we kind of present disability as one way when it actually presents in many different ways. And it's really interesting that nearly 1,000 people feel that most people don't understand them. I don't think most people understand me and my conditions. I think people look at me and think, well, you're healthy because you got dressed today, blah blah blah, and they don't actually realise how I feel. And a lot of people don't understand what it's like to be disabled. So yeah, I don't get the impression that people do understand me personally. And you can let me know down below if you're comfortable, if you feel that people do or don't understand your conditions. I guess I can't expect people to understand fully my conditions, but I guess it's just more that I wish that people didn't like openly judge me for the things that I need. So like my mobility aids, and then like maybe one day I won't use it because my disability isn't linear. And people can sometimes judge me for that a bit and be like, well, you used it yesterday and now you're not needing it, blah blah blah. So I kind of wish that people were more open to learn and less judgmental, rather than understand fully about my disability, because I wouldn't ever expect somebody to know every single thing about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So if you're not diagnosed, do you feel misunderstood by doctors? And 88% of people said yes. So there were 597 votes for yes and 78 for no. So most people feel that they are basically not getting understood by their doctor. So I guess I would interpret that as they feel that they're not getting adequate care in a way, or at least they feel like they're not being listened to by their doctors. And before I was diagnosed, I would definitely think that doctors, and I still think that doctors don't understand me at all. They don't really understand what it feels like to be disabled and what it's like to have my disability and things like that. So next question kind of follows on very nicely to this, which was, does your GP understand your disability? 71% of people said no. Now it is really important to remember that GPs are not like necessarily specialists in things. They're more like an overview to help with a range of different conditions. So you can't expect every GP to be an expert on every disability, even if that can feel frustrating. But I definitely think it would be good if GPs were able to access information more easily, or at least refer on to specialists, and you were able to like speak to specialists more easily. I don't often have ways to connect with my specialists, so it's interesting that 628 people said no, that their GPs don't understand them, and 260 said yes. So yeah, I personally fit into the no category as well. I don't feel like my GP understands my conditions. I've been into hospitals and GPs and said I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and they go, what's that? And they're like, oh right, okay, and then I have to like tell them about my condition, blah blah blah. So it'd be good if there was like GPs had a broader idea of different conditions, so that you are able to access the help that you need. So if you use mobility devices, do they appear in your dreams? Mine don't. They never have. I've only been using them for about 6 months though, but let's see. Yes, 75 people, sometimes 198, and no 200. So pretty like mixed between sometimes. I find that really interesting. Actually, I just said that they don't, but I did have a dream the other day that I was in a wheelchair, and I'm thinking about getting a wheelchair because I've been really struggling with my current mobility aids. So yes, sometimes I guess. I don't always remember my dreams, and like often I'm not walking around in my dreams. So yeah, sometimes I guess would be me as well, but it's interesting that like it's half and half. So next question is, are you fully accommodated at your workplace? And 76% of people said no. So 540 people said no, and 171 said yes. Oh, employers, we definitely need to get better at making workplaces accessible and accommodating for disabled people, and ensuring that we hire disabled people, because disabled people, many of them work, many of them are good at doing jobs. I personally work. I do struggle with my job. I work a pretty relaxed job. I'm a graphic designer, so it's seated, and I work pretty relaxed hours because I work for a really good company at the moment. But yeah, disabled people many of them can do jobs, and often people are put off because people are disabled, and I really wish that wasn't the case, because like we are the biggest minority. Something like 1/4 of people are disabled, so please hire us, because we can do jobs and we need jobs. Obviously work doesn't equal worth, but not all disabled people get access to benefits. I think there's a lot of this idea that all disabled people get access to X amount of money, and that's definitely not true, and it's not free money. Getting PIP is really difficult, and if you don't work, that's also really, really valid. But disabled people also need jobs as well, so it's like a weird combination that some people don't work, and that's really valid. Some people do work and need jobs to be able to pay their bills. So yeah, if you are a disabled person who works, or you're looking for work and you're an employee, please hire us. And if you don't work, you are totally valid, and work does not equal worth, and capitalism and society sucks for telling us that it does. Right, next one. So are your mental health issues that are undiagnosed blamed on stress or illness? So yes. So 609 people said yes, and 127 people said no. So essentially blaming mental health on your conditions. Yeah, I can see this, because again, it's underfunded. So I feel like GPs or just anyone will try and blame it on something else rather than what the actual core issue is. And yeah, that can then lead into issues where you're not able to access help for your mental health. It's really difficult. I'll leave some links down below for mental health support and help. Next question is, are you dyslexic? And 76% of people said no, and 250 people said yes. This is just interesting for me because I'm dyslexic, but it's interesting that there's 250 dyslexics that were following me at this time. So yes. If you're neurodivergent, did you learn about this about yourself as an adult or as a child? This is bang slap in the middle, 50% and 50%. So 425 people on either side. Really interesting. This kind of shows me that we need to broaden our understanding of people who are neurodivergent. I myself am neurodivergent, because I know that often, particularly people who are assigned female at birth, can find it very difficult to get a diagnosis. So this needs to be better, and I find it interesting that it's literally bang slap in the middle in half. So yeah. Is it difficult getting medical supplies from your doctors? 68% of people said yes. So 498 people said yes, 233 said no. I have definitely in the past found it difficult to get access to medical treatment and medication in the past. Sometimes they'll say that they're going to prescribe it and it's just not at the pharmacy. You have to really fight to get a certain type of medication, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's definitely not accessible. They definitely don't make it easy. When I got diagnosed, they refused to take an email of my diagnosis letter. I had to give in a physical copy. That is not accessible for many people, so I had to walk to my GP physically print it out, give it to them and walk home. Definitely not accessible for many people and not ideal, and it just shows how inaccessible healthcare can really be. And yeah, I personally feel that getting access to medication and things like that is really difficult. If your disability is a mental health condition, do people belittle it? 92% of people said yes, 751 people said yes, 63 people said no. I think we know that society definitely is belittling of mental health, and it's really frustrating and tiring and not okay. Things are getting better. There are Instagram accounts that are normalizing mental health, but it is definitely tiring and frustrating. So when you were in education, did your teachers understand how to support you? So we've got yes, no, sometimes yes, but only if I requested it. And 384 people said no, which is the most popular. 23 people said yes, 278 people said sometimes, and 153 said yes, but only if I requested it. 384 people felt that they weren't supported, and I guess everything below yes is not being fully supported, and so most people felt that they weren't fully supported in education, which is upsetting. And again, I fall into that category. I had to really fight to get dyslexia support when I was in school, so yeah, I know that feeling. Next one, did you have to explain your disability to the doctor when they didn't know about it? 72% of people said yes, and 28% of people said no. 508 people said yes, 200 people said no. I definitely think that you have to explain disability to GPs, and often you have to basically diagnose yourself at home and then go to a GP and say, this is what I have, please refer me to this department. And yeah, exactly the same thing had to happen to me. I had to understand my condition, and I had to basically say, hey, can you refer me, blah, blah, blah. And then they referred me, and I had to explain my condition to them. So yeah. Right, next one. Have you ever felt like a doctor is blaming you for your illness? 79% of people said yes. 610 people said yes, 159 people said no. Again, oh, medical practitioners, please, 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 please don't blame people for their conditions. And I think it does just show, maybe it's just a communication thing, or like it's the fact that people aren't necessarily in doctors, like medical settings all the time. I don't know, but if you are blaming people, or it seems like you're blaming people, please don't. It's not a cool thing to do. Right. And also, I've definitely had GPs and doctors blame me for my conditions. Have you ever had any direct discrimination due to your disability? 77% said yes. So 572 people said yes, and 171 people said no. I definitely have. I've been refused access to disabled toilets before, and had people just tell me outright that I'm not disabled. I've had jobs taken away, and many disabled people have experienced that, and it's not okay, and we need to be better at not allowing discrimination to happen, but it's much easier said than done, and ableism is definitely very much alive and well, and I often feel that it can be a little bit missed by people, and so yeah, it's definitely very much alive and well. That is all of them. Let me know down below your thoughts. I'm pretty shocked by how many people feel that they're not supported by their GPs, or by their doctors, or by their medical professionals. That's pretty shocking to me. And yeah, the fact that so many people have experienced direct discrimination due to being disabled is quite shocking to me. Let me know down below which ones shocked you and which ones you expected. I think to me it's definitely a bit of a wake-up call about ableism and medical care, and the fact that it's just not accessible, and it is yeah, I guess just a wake-up call to that, and it feels pretty shocking to experience in a way. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you want to take part in future quizzes in the future, follow me at Disabled Eliza across all social medias, but I normally do them on Instagram, and it's all linked down below. If you do want to email me, you can email me at Disabled Eliza across all social medias. Across all emails. Email me at Disabled Eliza, not across all social medias. And if you did like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below. It's free, and you get to see more of me. Yay! Every Thursday at 5 PM I upload, so make sure you turn that bell on, don't miss it. Ding, ding, ding. And look after all of you at the moment. Stay safe, wash those hands, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great week, guys. Bye!